You're live, Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Carol. Good evening, everyone. I am Councillor Martin Griffiths and I will be chairing this meeting tonight. Firstly, can I please ask you to make sure that your microphones are muted? This will avoid interference during the meeting. May I also remind you of the virtual meeting protocol that you have previously been provided with, and that this meeting is now live. So welcome to any members of the public who are joining us. Thank you for coming. We really do hope for a seamless meeting with no connection difficulties. I just want to say and mention about our officers who do put a lot of work in to prepare for these virtual meetings and do a fantastic job, as always, to help us conduct our necessary business. Also present with me this evening are the members of the Resources Committee, our officers who have reports to present, Mr. Darcy, Mr. Piper and Mr. Watson, along with Carol Mundy, who is taking the minutes, and Fiona, who is acting as our producer this evening. For the benefit of those observing, the Council is using Microsoft Teams to bring you this meeting, and members have been advised to use the meeting chat function if they wish to speak. This facility is only available to members and officers, not the public. We will now start the meeting, and I'll start with agenda item number 1, apologies. Are there any apologies, please? It looks like we have no apologies. I believe we might have one member still trying to join us, but hopefully that won't take too long. Other than that, we have a full house. So moving on to agenda item number 2, which is declarations of interest. I haven't been notified of any declarations, but councillors, if you do wish to make a declaration, please indicate now by using the meeting chat. I'll just give you a few moments to do this. Thank you. Councillor Laura Lawman.
Hi, thank you, Chairman. I have an interest in item 4, Community Asset Transfer, Hemmingwell Skill and Community Centre. It is my understanding that Councillor Graham Lawman is a speaker for this, and he also is a member of the Hemmingwell Skill Centre.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brian Skitterall.
Again, on item 4, I've got a non-pecuniary interest as a Director of Shire Services who are mentioned.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Andrew Scarborough.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, item 4, Community Asset Transfer, Hemmingwell Skills and Community Centre. One of the trustees is well known to me as a former close work colleague at University of Northampton. That's an other interest, I think.
Thank you very much. I can't see any more on the meeting chat function, so we will therefore move to the next item of business, which is agenda item number 3, the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of June 2020. These minutes have previously been circulated. Can I have a proposer and seconder, please? Please unmute your mic.
Propose.
Councillor Law.
Second, Chairman.
And seconded by Councillor Partridge Underwood. Voting will be taken on general assent unless there is a reason not to do so. So thank you, members. If we can now go to the vote. All those in favour of acceptance of the minutes, please say aye.
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 Anyone against? Are there any abstentions? None have been recorded. Therefore, thank you. The minutes are confirmed and I will sign these very shortly. We now move on to agenda item number 4, the community asset transfer for the Hemmingwell Skills Centre. We have now 2 people joining us on the telephone, either from the centre or from home, who would like to address the meeting. That is Jackie Brown and Councillor Graham Lorman. Mr. Piper, would you like to introduce your report, please? Unmute your mic.
Thank you, Chairman. The report, I believe, is in front of you and it is self-explanatory. I have nothing to add to the report, but I'm happy to answer questions in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Piper. Please mute your mic. I think we will now go to the first speaker, which will be Jackie Brown, who is with us on the telephone. Jackie, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so I'm a trustee. I'm Jackie Brown. I'm a trustee at the Hemmingwell Community Centre. I've been there now for the better of 2 years. Currently running, we have active food pantry that has been helping quite a number of people who are struggling. So having the use of the centre from the CIO point of view, we are catering to a number of less fortunate people. They come in every Wednesday and they get several parcels of fresh vegetable and meat, which other food banks don't tend to offer. We do a make lunch where we feed children who are pupil premium, and every holiday they are there to get a hot meal. Again, that is run by myself and a church. Well, both churches get involved, and we have some youngsters who do some coaching. We have young leaders operating out of the centre. We work alongside Made with Many. At the minute, they've contacted us and they came in, met with some of the children, did art session, and they are intending on doing refreshing the mural that's just in front of the shop and at the double doors of the centre, which is a part of what we do. Since we also have a school operating, Elmore Education, out of the centre, she's pretty much fearful, as with us as a CIO, she gets really good rates. She fears that if it should go to another landlord, it's going to be really expensive. We have Slimming World, who comes there twice per week, and that lady has roughly 60 persons who use her services on Tuesdays and Fridays. I work alongside now with Northamptonshire Rights and Equality Council, and again, we're trying to target the Black, ethnic and minority groups and youngsters in getting them engaged in projects. And as a Black person myself, being in the CIO, that will enable greater community involvement. The residents use the centre for bingo. Obviously with COVID, that has been a pause. Halloween parties, but we're not doing the parties this year, but the centre is used as a central point or a core so that we can get all the gifts in and then we can take it to their homes. Christmas hampers, a similar thing. Again, we need the centre for that. As a CIO, we work much closely with the community, and we would definitely like to have the tenancy be given to us, because we have these projects already sorted and we're just ready to go into the, well, we have already gone into the community and we just want to cement that. I think that's all I want to say.
Thank you very much. Before we go to the second speaker, has anybody any questions to ask of Jackie? There are no questions, Jackie. So we will now go over to Councillor Graham Lorman. Councillor Lorman, if you'd like to speak now, you have 5 minutes.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Loud and clear.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Before I start, can I just pass on apologies from Tony Naggs, one of the trustees who's had a family illness and can't be with us. He would have told the committee about the various training courses. But thank you to the officers who progressed this application to this point. The centre has been a part of the Hemmingwell since the earliest days of the estate through various iterations, most successfully when run by the Hope Church under Simon Trundle, who really immersed himself in the community. He has even sent a note of support today. After his move away, Goodwill Solutions, driven by Mike Britton, took over with a vision allied to their work in Northampton. With his untimely passing, Goodwill have refocused their business and relinquished the lease. So this is now a great opportunity to relaunch the centre and take advantage of the community spirit shown at the time, such as when the square in front of the centre was renovated and after a couple of unfortunate tragedies in the estate. Rebranded The Nest, it will be a village hall for the estate, but much more. A centre for improving health and well-being, education and skills training, as well as events and celebrations for one of our county's most deprived areas. Of course, with the current COVID restrictions especially, achieving these aims and enhancing the services in the way described in the business plan will take time and be a gradual thing. It's a chance for the community to have a full say and control its own destiny again. And some more local residents have expressed their interest in joining the board and volunteering once the CAT has been approved. Simon passed on a piece of advice that is still relevant. He said residents on the board should be seen on the board, as otherwise the charity will be seen as others doing to us rather than with us. We plan a small staff, but fully intend that they be local residents. Having said that, the centre has been able to continue at a lower key with some activities, as you've just heard. For instance, we have continued to deliver meals to those who need support and been a base for some SEMLET funded courses. And we're also grateful for the support that the council has been able to offer. 2 years social impact reports were submitted, though Goodwill amended their later report done by the University of Northampton to amalgamate the centre to the Northampton results. The benefit was clear at 180,000 on a 16,000 rent. The cost of a specific social impact report would be approximately £3,500. So we would hope that assessing this by BCW could be done more cost effectively. Of course, it's difficult to value a service that has not reached its fruition. Councillors will note that the application was for a freehold transfer with the fallback of reversion to the council in the event of failure. An option would have been for a 99-year lease as per the Daylight Centre. To date, we've had no contact from Greatwell Homes, who have no track record of running community centres, and it does not seem to fit into their business model, so it's a concern as to their intentions. In addition, we have had no opportunity so far to discuss the lease terms. In fact, we've recently been given a summary and told that this has been negotiated between Greatwell Homes and BCW and is virtually fait accompli. As you see in the report, the freehold transfer of the centre has been delayed pending this report and granting the CAT. Given there's no income to GH, only a potential liability, we would ask that this aspect is revisited. Whatever the outcome of the lease, this is a great opportunity for the council to promote and pump prime a facility for the Hemmingwell estate with all its needs, which we are determined to push through. There is a clear community there who are willing to help themselves given this start. The benefits have been proven in the past through the Hope and Goodwill Solutions. Let's show it can be done sustainably now. Thank you, councillors, for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Lorman. Members, if you wish to ask any questions, please make your request using the meeting chat. you're very experienced councillors, and I'm sure you're mindful that some of the information that you have is confidential. And if you make specific reference to that, we will need to formally end this part of the meeting and move into private session. Members, have you got any questions of Councillor Lorman? Councillor Henley.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Laura Longman was first.
Councillor Laura Lorman.
Thank you. I didn't have a question to Councillor Graham Lorman. I just wanted to fully endorse the application. Hemmingwell is and has a heart, and the heart is the Hemmingwell Skills Centre. And it is desperately needed that the community can come together at all times. I have seen over the years, obviously we had different circumstances then, I have seen how many hundreds of people have used that. I've been to many functions helping at car boot sales and whatever to raise money, for instance, for Hemmingwell Hearts, who in turn were then going out into the community and giving meals out to the homeless. And there is such a variety. There is sports that were being played, and it is just an absolute must that it is transferred. We would do the community such a huge benefit to give them a point for not just now but for the future as well. And obviously the future is when COVID is over or whatever they can use the centre for in the meantime. So I'm really pleading this for support for the transfer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lorman. Councillor Adam Henley.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I thought there was going to be a question there. Graham, just a question on the lease item. As you said that you are seeking a freehold transfer, but the report clearly says in 6.6 that we're potentially offering you a 25-year lease. I didn't feel in your earlier comments that you were fully you're clearly not fully supportive of that. Would you accept that as an option to ensure it goes through?
Obviously, if that was the only option available, the only thing we could negotiate, then we would have to accept it. There were some terms or some suggested terms within it that were a concern, which we haven't got in front of you, and I haven't got either. But that hopefully would be part of a negotiation. But yes, we'd rather have 25 years than nothing. But obviously, we'd rather have our own control.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, I'm told there were problems with the live meeting earlier, but they seem to have been resolved now. Any more questions of Councillor Lorman?
Chairman, I don't seem to be getting the chat room. It's Barry Graves. Can I?
Okay, Councillor Graves.
Thank you. Graham, a couple of things. A very comprehensive submission you've put in, and my first thought is it's a very ambitious programme that you've set out. And of course, putting in a new submission, people think the more activities you include, the greater degree of success you'll have. It's an ambitious programme. Are you comfortable that you can achieve all of those things? And secondly, you do mention that you have a professional or a fundraiser with some professional experience. We all know that the voluntary sector faces a massive problem with funding, and strong external funding is essential. We saw the manager of Glamis Hall on television just a few nights ago claiming that they could well be in jeopardy and looking for sources. No organisation can now look, particularly the County Council, for funding because they ain't going to be there. And the Northamptonshire Council, we don't yet know what their view is. So it's a long question, but I suppose two things. Are you comfortable you can deliver the programme? And secondly, the issue of external funding. Are you comfortable with that?
Councillor.
Well, two things. As I said in the speaks, we don't expect to be able to do everything at once. You've got to walk before you can run. But when we started to put this together, it was noticeable how many of these things are actually already have been run or have been started at some stage, and so should be not many of them were brand new things. And the people that are listed as we've worked with in partnership, most of them we have already worked with in partnership. So I am hopeful that gradually that can build up. And of course, the main thing is to sweat the asset to get the building used post-COVID as much as possible. And in answer to the question about grants, yes, we've been very successful recently in getting grants, particularly for training and other things. But that's one of the reasons we've tried to keep the costs as low as possible, down to one permanent and one part-time staff member, it's in order to ensure that it's affordable.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Graham.
No supplementary on that, Barry?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, indeed, from members?
Chairman.
Partridge Underwood.
Oh, thank you. Like Councillor Graves, I've been trying to type into the chat, but it doesn't seem to be working anyway. I'm sure it's my fault. I just want to speak in support of this. The Hemmingwell estate, there has always presented challenges, but there is certainly a will there, and I believe the work that Simon Trundle did all those years, the commitment that he and others from that community will pay off. And I believe, you know, given the help that they need at this particular time, it certainly should come to fruition at a later date. As I say, there will be challenges, but I'm sure, you know, the administration will take that on the chin and look forward with a good heart. So I intend to support this tonight. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Adam, Councillor Henley, did you want to add anything, or was that just a comment?
I was just testing the chat, Chair.
Oh, I thought that might be the case. Any other members wish to say anything on this?
Yes, I wonder if I can speak, please, if you would, Chair. I'd just like to say that I also support this because I had the opportunity of being able to get more involved with the Hemmingwell Centre during my mayoral year when I was the mayor, and I found it quite amazing how much enthusiasm the people of the Hemmingwell estate that have made it work, the enthusiasm and the hard work and the determination that they have, they can overcome so many worrying things. And I know it will be difficult during this year, but I'm sure that they will find a way. So I entirely support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrington. Any other members wish to speak? I can see no more in the... Oh, and Councillor Scarborough, are we questioning the speaker? No, we are opening the debate, Councillor Scarborough. I was waiting for you to come in. I knew you'd want to say something. Unmute.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm much reassured. It was the seamless move with Councillor Lorman asking questions, then people making statements in support. I confused me. I apologise. It seems to me, at risk of more or less saying what everybody else has said, it seems to me that this is the best long-term solution that we can come up with in respect of the Hemmingwell. Other parts of town are well provided with centres, and I think rumours of the imminent demise of Glamis Hall are greatly exaggerated, having seen how much they might lose from the county council. I don't blame them for banging the drum. As Barry says, the times are hard for the voluntary sector and you need to find funds wherever you can. I have to say I do agree with Councillor Graves that this looks like a very optimistic business case to me. Having said that, the alternative is we let community facilities on the Hemmingwell die, and that's simply not acceptable. I wish those concerned with this project the very best of luck, and I hope that they will flourish under a future authority that is rather more far-sighted and develops better partnerships with the voluntary sector than the County Council has done to date. I'm only sorry we can't support them into the future, but that's not going to be possible after next year anyway. But no, I strongly support this as the best way of maintaining community facilities on the Hemmingwell estate for all the reasons that colleagues have said. It can't be allowed to die. It mustn't be allowed to die.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments now, sorry, from members? In that case, we have a proposed action as detailed in 4. I will read it. This committee is invited to resolve to approve the community asset transfer of the Hemmingwell Community Centre and Skills Centre in accordance with the policy. 4.2, that the review of the assessment of social value of the services to be provided by the CIO be delegated to the Assistant Director / Corporate Landlord. Can I have a mover?
Move that, Chairman.
Happy to second.
Councillor Bell. All those in favour, please unmute your mic and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone against? Are there any abstentions? That is therefore carried unanimously. Members, can I just add a few words now that has been agreed? I'm extremely proud of our recent record in community asset transfers. Glams Hall has been a huge success and I'm sure it will continue to be. The transfer of the Daylight Centre to the Fellowship, to the Queen's Hall to the Fellowship is another example. And a village hall, a village green somewhere in the south of the borough is going to be used as soon as I'm sure we come through this dreadful pandemic. Can I urge the community to get behind the facility? Can I urge groups to get in touch with the Skills Centre as soon as they possibly can and plan for the future? And last but no means least, I love the name The Nest. I think it's absolutely brilliant and I think it should be something that we can look back on in years to come and be extremely proud of. Thank you very much, members.
Yeah.
We'll now move to item 5, and that is the financial monitoring and position statement for 2020-2021. Mr. Darcy, I believe you will be presenting this report. Please unmute your mic and proceed. Thank you. Councillor Skittrell, would you like to speak now ahead of the report?
Yes, thank you. This is actually the item where my interest lies on 4.2.
Okay, thank you very much. There is also a Councillor Lorman, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. Just in case it's a personal interest in item 5, any mention of Shire Community Services appearing in there. Councillor Graham Lorman is the director, so it's just a personal one. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chairman, can I, sorry, I missed this at the beginning. Shire Community Services, I am a member and a user of the scheme.
Thank you very much.
If I may, Chair, just to mention on this item because I wasn't able to get in before. I am involved personally now with the Victoria Centre, and so anything which is relevant to that is important, but it is not a pecuniary interest.
Thank you very much for that. We will be saying goodbye to our speakers very shortly, members, just to confirm that. So now we'll finally get on to Mr. Darcy to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to draw your attention to the current forecast outturn position in the report, which is now showing 116k overspend. That is taking account of all known service movements and forecast COVID pressures and the income received to date. We are hopeful that we are submitting additional government returns on a monthly basis, so we're hopeful to get further funding, which will hopefully offset this pressure towards a more balanced position for year end. Just for information, I'll be arranging a separate informal committee to discuss the continuing COVID pressures and any further funding required from the funding received, as we've done before, but we're just finalising details with our partners in October. But for your information, we have included the most likely position in this forecast outturn, so we've factored that in based on previous information and any updates since we met last time. I just want to draw your attention to section 7 as well, and the recommendation to extend the voluntary and community grants for a further year. This is in line with all North Northampton partners across the county in the north going into the North Northampton Unitary. And we're hoping then we can recommend that to the North Northampton Shadow to include in the North Northampton MTFP for next year. And then obviously the council can make further decisions for future years. Appendix 2 shows a full breakdown of these. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Darcy. Members, have you any questions of the report as detailed? Councillor Tim Alliburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just a couple of comments on page 54, which is the budget pressures on 6.7. Firstly, the increase in mixed recycling. Sorry, am I not heard? Or I think, Mr. Chairman, you're muted now. Is there a problem with my microphone?
No, we're hearing you.
Oh, okay. Increase in mixed recyclates at 200,000. I'm assuming that's due to the rejection by our disposal company, Suez, and of course we've had increased distance to take a lot of this because of the higher levels of contamination that we seem to have these days. Obviously, with demand going down, and I know that for a fact the cardboard we have can often be wet and therefore it's rejected. So I'm assuming the extra costs refer to the extra distance this waste has had to be carried for disposal. That's the first point. The second point is the item underneath that, the increase in IT cost due to COVID, 13,000. I'm assuming that's probably in addition to the Teams licenses, there must be some hardware costs in there. And I'm just wondering if we've used any consultants to help us with virtual meetings. Thank you.
So taking those in order, Councillor Alliburn. The first one, as you say, some of it is a higher contamination rate. Actually, some of it is to do with an end of contract that we had at a certain fixed rate as well. And post that, the rates of disposal have increased drastically. So we are trying to work with our partners in the north to see if we can tag on to a different contract that would save the council money. And hopefully we'll get that into place fully for North Northamptonshire. The IT costs, yes, there was a small additional cost for COVID. We are trying to capture the COVID costs separately. So part of that was setting up the virtual meetings in the first place. And part of it was hardware, but a lot of it actually hardware-wise. We're utilising staff computers before rolling them out to staff for members' use. So we haven't paid, more than we've needed to.
Thank you, Mr. Darcy.
Thank you for that. Councillor Henley.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose technically I should be declaring interest because I'm actually using one of those laptops that Mr. Darcy mentioned, so I'm sure you're thrilled by that. Moving swiftly on, I thank him for the update regarding the fact we're going to have an interim meeting. I'm disappointed we're not doing it tonight, because it would have been good to have got this out of the way and everyone then knows exactly where we are, because any doubts or any concerns can only add further to the issues that we're going. I know that we only approved funding into October. Well, October starts tomorrow, so I know we didn't generate funding just to the start of October, but the reality is that I'm conscious that we're running a bit short of time, so it'd be good to have a date for that as soon as possible. When we get to page 654, I add up the maths that we've got a COVID grant of £943,000 and COVID items of pressures of 1073. However, as reported to the Northants overview scrutiny, I have different numbers. I have a cost of 1.4 million, a grant of 986,000, which leaves a variance of £414,000. I would welcome some clarification as to how the two are different, because that's based. I get the fact the grant may have slightly changed, but that's about £300,000 of additional pressures that we're not seeing in this report, Chair.
Yeah. I'll just touch on the one Wellingborough point first, Councillor Henley. So yeah, we were aiming to get that to this meeting. We are working with the partners on getting a bid in for what they need going forward, and obviously it might be slightly different to what's been being provided up to now regarding changes in the situation, obviously. So we were hopeful of getting that, but we've been promised it now for early October, so it should be very soon. Hopefully we'll have that meeting to go into detail on that, but we are obviously hoping to continue support as well. Touching on what you've just said there, you're absolutely right. These figures are the latest forecasts. Included in what was submitted previously, we did have some losses of income for planning and also for commercial income. But as we've looked at what we're actually collecting in on the commercial income and what we're getting through as planning fees, I've actually removed those now as loss of income, because we are actually gaining the income. In some instances, we're getting more income than we budgeted for as well. So I've taken those out. There is also a slight change on the environmental side, where we have the Doddington Road site included for increasing the capacity there, but that's actually gone through our capital programme. So again, that's a change.
Okay, thank you. And just a minor admin point, Chair, now that Mr. Darcy has mentioned one Wellingborough, I'll now have to declare an interest, as I'm an active volunteer in one Wellingborough. We weren't discussing it tonight, so I didn't mention it earlier, but I now will. So if the officers can please ensure that's added. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to confirm, I did speak to Mr. Darcy earlier today, and we are going to get moving very quickly on that one Wellingborough situation. Members, I'm seeing that we're having some difficulty, although some live streaming seems to have ceased, but I'm also getting messages that people are watching live, so I'm going to carry on with the meeting. Are there any other questions of this report detailed at 5?
Please, Chairman.
Councillor Graves.
Thank you. It's regarding the existing contract.
Can you unmute, Barry? Can you unmute and start again, please?
I think we may have lost him.
It looks like we've lost the connection to it's coming back. Councillor Graves, can you hear us? While we're waiting for Councillor Graves to come back, has any other members wish to speak or ask questions? Sorry. Members, we will pause this meeting for approximately 3 or 4 minutes to get the live streaming back on.
Hello?
Barry, are you there?
I am now. It just crashed, but I'm back.
Right, Barry, stay online. We are in pause mode until we get the live feedback working, and then you can ask your question. If you just bear with us for now 3 minutes or so. If any of the members wish to add their desire to speak in the list that's on the chat function, then we can take those as quickly as possible when we resume.
Let's hope this is better than what happened at Overview Scrutiny a few weeks ago when they couldn't log into YouTube. We had to spend 45 minutes waiting to get into YouTube. How we didn't laugh.
Sorry, if you could just bear with us a second. We think we found the problem, so we'll just sort it out. We'll let you know as soon as it's done.
Okay, we'll bear with.
Carol, could you please remove any of the speakers that are not members of the committee as well from the participant list?
Sorry, Carol, you might not be able to because I probably already have.
Yeah, I've removed I think it was only Councillor Lawman that was on there.
Yeah, or 7903 or whatever it was. I think it's just been chucked out as well.
Yeah, I chucked them out.
Thank you. We won't be set.
In true IT fashion, would it be worth stopping recording and starting again?
Members, just so that you know, Karen Denton's putting out some tweets to the public to advise them that we are just pausing the meeting while we assess our technical difficulties.
Thank you for that.
You look like you're getting too comfortable in that chair, Tom.
It's so tempting. I keep putting the paper up like that, pretending to read it.
You wouldn't be the first committee member to do that, Tom.
No, you're true there, Adam.
So when we resume, it'll be Councillor Graves, followed by Councillor Scarborough.
Sorry.
Can other members please mute, other than Barry?
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to speak on the existing contracts and extension, voluntary sector contracts. This is...
Hold on, Barry.
Yeah.
We're not back yet.
Okay.
Getting there. We don't want to miss you live on the telly, do we, Barry?
Oh dear, no. God forbid.
Hello, Councillor Griffiths. We're up and running again now. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much, Carol. So now we'll pass over to Councillor Graves.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So I was going to talk about the voluntary sector contracts. This is a terrific resource for voluntary organisations, very competitive. I guess there's never enough money, but the recipients are always very grateful. I wanted to talk about Nevern Valley Community Action, and I'm in a difficult
Councillor Graves has frozen, so what we'll do is we'll move on to Councillor Scarborough, and then when Barry unfreezes, we'll go back to Councillor Graves. So, Councillor Scarborough, we are still live.
Thank you, Chairman. It was about the same item 7, the rollover of the voluntary sector grants, that I wanted to speak as well. First of all, this seems to me to be a splendid solution to the transitional problem, and I'm delighted to hear that this is mirroring ideas in the other 3 boroughs and districts, as I understand it. I just wanted to ask Sean whether the shadow unitary executive had accepted this as a constraint on its budget for next year, because I suspect if you add the 4 boroughs and districts up, it's going to come to quite a substantial sum, probably the best part of £1 million. And just wanted to know what the status of this is. I would hope that if the 4 boroughs and districts all think it's a good idea, that there should be no problem with the executive, because that's 8 out of 10 of the executive. But I just wanted to be sure to know where we stand with the actual process for making sure this actually happens.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Scarborough. 2 of the councils, so Kettering and Corby, have actually contractually obligated to continue theirs well beyond vesting day. I think for at least 1 year, it might be 2 or 3 years. East Northants have done a very similar report to this one, effectively going through their council to recommend the extension for a year, and they've already gone through that and put in the recommendation through to North Northants for the MTFP. In our position as well, we'd actually budgeted for the 300k community grants for this year, so we're actually going to provide a reduction to that amount for the one-off extra ones we've done this year to get it down to that base amount. But we do still want to obviously put that into the MTFP and make sure it's recommended to be approved. But I think it's got full support of the place work stream, which is where this came from as a request for Welling to follow suit effectively.
Did you want to follow up on that, Councillor Scarborough?
No, Just
You're muted, Councillor Scarborough.
Just to say that cooperation is great to see, and it's good to see that the voluntary sector across the whole of North Northamptonshire is going to be given a degree of transitional protection. And I think that's absolutely splendid. I would just add, it's a pity that the executive couldn't come up with a similar sensible compromise on council tax support, but never mind, because 3/4 of the population of North Northamptonshire will have to pay more as a result of that if it goes through. I hope scrutiny will have words to say about it next week.
I'm sure they will, Councillor Scarborough. Thank you. I can't see Barry back on.
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Off you go then, Barry.
It's getting a bit tiresome now, isn't it? But keep disappearing. No, I was talking about Nen Valley Community Action. I founded the organisation. I've had no direct contact with them for many years. Originally it was set up to provide infrastructure services for East Northants, and then latterly got involved in Wellingborough. As I understand it, they no longer have a presence in Wellingborough. They took over the brokerage for the voluntary section, recruiting new volunteers from the old volunteer bureau. And all I'm going to suggest is that 20,000 is a big chunk of money going forward. Are we satisfied that they are actually performing the role that they were originally set up to do? And really, I think we need to look at that, because just to take it forward, tick box exercise, I'm not terribly comfortable that they are actually achieving the objectives in Wellingborough.
That's a fair point, Councillor Graves. I think we'd already agreed some revised KPIs that should have been coming through the partnerships and performance group, and we are monitoring that again, so we should be getting full updates later in the year on how they are doing, and we can again recommend any changes to KPIs, or if we do want to continue them or not. We can take certain ones out if we're not happy we're getting what we need, and go out to market to see if we can get someone else to deliver that going forward.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
And as always, it is outcome based, as we have done for several years. Councillor Emerson, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Just following that up, I can only speak really about the way that NVCA have been involved with other organisations that I'm involved with, and certainly for the Kingsway Centre for a variety of things. I have found them very helpful and taken their advice that I have asked for in terms of charity regulations and a whole number of other issues. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Members, I cannot see any more questions. So with that, we will move swiftly to the proposal. Sorry, did anybody else wish to speak? In that case, we'll move to item 4. And this committee is invited to resolve to note the position of the revenue monitoring and the reasons for the variances reported in Appendix 1. And 4.2, approve an in-principle extension to our current community support grant arrangements and service level agreements with the voluntary sector organisations set out in Section 7 of this report and Appendix 2, and make a recommendation to the Northamptonshire Shadow Authority that the financial provision to cover the agreement extensions are included in the 2021-2022 draft budget for the new Northamptonshire Council. Do I have a proposer?
So moved, Chairman.
Councillor Partridge Underwood, a seconder.
Chairman. Second.
I saw Councillor Harrington.
Thank you.
Else. That's it, that will do. All those in favour, please unmute your mic and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone against, please indicate. Anyone abstaining, please indicate. There are none. So thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 6. Which is the capital programme monitoring report. Mr. Darcy again, sorry, I'm promoting you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just highlight section 6 of this report. Outlines the 5.5 million of reprofiling that we've got scheduled into 2021-22, which will bring the programme to just under 14 million for this financial year. Obviously the schemes are being reprofiled, but we are fully committed and we'll be delivering these schemes still. It might just be that final payments or the end of the schemes will be delivered by the new unitary council. As of today, we've spent £6 million, but with the further commitments that are in that are due very early October, we should actually be hitting 8.5 million in October. So that's quite substantial spend already, and you know we're going to spend significantly more than that by the end of the financial year. Section 7 outlines a request for 170k of funding to support the water feature that we've previously discussed at Development Committee and at Resources Committee before. So this is for the Tive Barn Public Realm Works, as per the recommendations of the Wellingborough Town Regeneration Working Group and Development Committee that happened on Monday evening. And also Section 8 outlines a 69k capital bid to improve the local parks, car parks and open spaces. Happy to take any questions.
Any members wish to ask any questions? I can't see any. Of course, this is all very live and topical because we were discussing it only earlier this week. Councillor Henley.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't know how quickly others were going to type, so I didn't rush. Looking back at the June minutes, I remember asking officers to do a thorough reprofiling job, and I didn't believe that we could spend 19 million in a year. And I know former Councillor Darcy was recognising that was realistic. I get that the fact that we have moved potentially 5.5 million out of this year, but the reality is we have just dumped it into next year. I still struggle to believe that everything on this list will be delivered next year, mainly because I have a feeling that if I go back a year before and a year before that, quite a few of these items are old friends now, very old friends. So I get, and I'm struggling. I know that Sean has told me a number of times that providing it's still in here, it's guaranteed and we won't lose it. When I see words such as we don't really have an active project yet for the CPOs of 551,000, if I was the North Northants Authority next year, I would say, well, you didn't really have a plan, so you just moved it into the next financial year. Thanks very much for that. Now, that may be me being cynical, but the reality is I feel that this didn't go as far as I was expecting, and I felt I was promised in June a thorough reprofiling and a validation that these are all still real. I don't believe all of these are still real.
Mr. Darcy.
So in response to that, Councillor Henley, I don't disagree on the example you've brought out, and there's probably one other example on there of empty properties. But I think other than those, there are plans in place to spend them, and most of them are just slippage from the end of the year into early next year. So I agree, there's a couple of items, but we're talking of less than £1 million out of that total 19 million that was in for the year. So it's quite a small proportion. And in those examples as well, CPO wise, we'll probably look at that as a North Northants wide perspective, and we might actually increase that for other properties in the wider area. So I do think we have done a fairly as thorough job as we could have done at this point in time, and I do believe that the capital programme for this year will be quite close to the figure that we've now got that down to for the end of the year.
Thank you for that. Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Chair. I'm disappointed to see that the disability facilities grant property adaptations will be delayed. I mean, the people that have applied for this grant are desperate, usually desperate to have their house modified to take account of their disability. And well aware of COVID and the limitations. However, I would have thought that more could have been done, particularly as during the lockdown and going forward into the winter months, the people that would make use of this grant facility will be in their home. So it's even more important that these adaptations are carried out as quickly as possible. So I'd really like to know if there's any, well, the reason why we have delayed it, and if there's anything we can do to try and get these projects completed within the financial year. And the second question, if I may, relates to the Castle Theatre. The Castle Theatre has been closed for a number of months due to COVID, and most people would agree that it's an ideal time to get planned works completed during this quiet period.
Gone on mute, Elaine. We got up to the castle.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. So yes, you would have thought that during this quiet period, more work would have been done, because there's nobody else in the theatre to prevent the work from being completed. And hopefully, if we can get the work done during this time, then when we get back to some form of normality, the theatre can be up and running really quickly and try and recoup as much money as we can, rather than starting to be further delayed by the needing to do more work during the time when it should be recouping some of the losses.
Thank you for that, Sean.
Yeah. So touching on your first point, the DFG, we have tried what we can actually to bring in some of that service that was through Great Well Homes back into the council to push the quicker delivery of that. There is also a linkage with the county council on that as well, and some delays that we have to work in partnership to deliver some of these things. So as Unitary kicks in, obviously we'll have greater control of that all under one roof, that we can pull it all together as one service in one council. But we are trying to do our best on that, and we'll see if we can pull any more strings to increase what we're delivering in the year. And I'm happy to provide a MBN on progress on that to give you further details if that would help.
I would be grateful.
Well, we'll get that circulated. We'll get that worked on. The second point regarding the castle, yeah, very good point. The issue we have, there's two issues really. One is that a lot of the staff are actually furloughed. So we do need some of the stuff in that effectively we'd be paying for just to come in and possibly work on some of this capital scheme to get it together and be delivered, but they wouldn't be doing most of the rest of the day job that they'd normally be doing when it's up and running. The second point really is obviously we do need to establish whether there'll be significant changes to how the theatre operates in the sort of short to medium term as well. So we might want to change the spec of actually what's delivered there. So we'll try and, you're right, we want to try and do what we can while it's closed to maximise what's delivered and get that while it's not going to affect the operation, but we want to make sure it's fit for purpose for the sort of short, medium and long term going forward as well.
Thank you for that, and yeah, we will follow up that members briefing note. Councillor Scarborough.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just one question, but I'll come back on some other things in the debate. It's really Brooks and Waterways, which has been a hobby horse of mine, as you'll know, for some time because of the Queensway Brook. I'm pleased to see that the contract's been let, and that we're forecasting spending most of the budget this year, but that we haven't got a start date, and we're approaching the worst possible time of the year to be wanting to clear and re-profile brooks. The autumn gales have started and it's tipping down outside. So I was just wondering how realistic that is, that we reckon we're actually going to do about 2/3 of the Brooks project before the end of the financial year, given we're heading into winter and a period of high levels in the brooks.
I did sign this off a few weeks ago, actually, with the contractor, so they were happy that they wanted to start work as soon as possible. But you're right, obviously we're getting into the wrong time of the year, but work should be starting shortly, so they will be trying to get as much done as they can as soon as they can. So there might be a bit of a gap then when the weather's not so good, but they are trying to crack on and do as much as soon as they can.
Let's pray for a mild and dry winter in that case. That's fine.
We will.
We'll settle for a dry and frosty one, Councillor Scarborough.
Yeah, I do nicely.
Councillor Francis, can you unshare your desktop, please? I did this the other night and it's quite easy to do. That's sorted. Thank you. So we're back to normal screen. Thank you ever so much. Any other members got any questions? In that case, we have it to resolved to note, I won't read them out, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3.
Sorry, Chairman, I did want to speak in debate. I did say I want to come back on a couple of issues in debate.
Off you go, Councillor Scarborough.
Thank you. First, a positive. Item 8, very regrettable that this is necessary, but it's absolutely necessary and has our strong support. The thing I'm more concerned about is item 7 and recommendation 4.4. Are we really sure that it's worth our while spending 170,000 plus 7,200 a year in running costs on a water feature? That seems to be excessive. There are plenty of better ways we can spend our money. Those of us who've been around more for a few years will be able to show you the water feature in Croyland Gardens. It's not a water feature anymore, it's a dry flower bed. It was a splendid water feature. It was fed by the springs that run down into the Swanspool Brook, and it was trashed utterly by antisocial behaviour by the residents. To my mind, the water feature that's proposed here is simply asking for trouble, and I'm 100% against it.
Thank you. Does any member wish to respond to that? Councillor Graves, perhaps.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry to hear the pessimism coming forward. I probably remember the water feature in Croyland Garden long before you did, Councillor Scarborough. In fact, somebody I knew very well drowned in it on their way home after a night out. But that's an aside. Why should a water feature be vandalised any more than anything else? You can switch them off. The idea of this came forward 2 or 3 years ago, and it really started when, I believe, we were talking a little while ago about MVCA and the Northamptonshire carers put in a bid to Bridget Gamble in those days to refurbish, and not only they couldn't refurbish, Tithe Barn to put in a whole range of services, including a cafeteria. And I have to say, I picked up on this and made the point that having gone to continent many times, including Vittlich, how pleasant it is to sit in a nice area with a water feature, although at those days I was thinking more of a fountain than a little dribble on the ground, and sit and have in the open air an ice cream or an ice cake. That's what happens. That's what happens in Vittlich. And it wouldn't have taken a lot of imagination to put this into practice. And I'm pleased to see it's gone this far. Whether it goes to the extent of a cafe is the next stage. But I'm wholeheartedly in support of this. It brightens up an area that was a tatty piece of grass around an iconic building. And if you're coming to Wellingborough as a visitor and you walk in to the town from Morrison's car park, you come across a really historic building like Tide Barn. You've got the Hind Hotel and Croyland Abbey. And why not have a nice enhanced area paved with seats? And what's wrong with the water feature? I think it's very, very pessimistic. So you can't have it because it's going to be vandalised. What a negative attitude. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Well, here we go. The meeting's livening up, because if there's one thing that will get us talking, it's talking about a water feature. Councillor Peter Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, Andrew, I'm going to have to correct you. The actual reason that pool stopped being a pool was when Morrison's was built, we completely lost the spring water. It disappeared down their drain, I suspect. And then the cost of putting that back in some other form at the time was prohibitive, and that's why it was changed to what it is now. And that was very regrettable, because I personally fell into that particular old pool by trying to save an animal that was stuck on the side of the step, but then that's another matter. I did do it with a big splash. But it was, in fact, that was the reason. And I do think that if we can retain the water feature, I agree with Councillor Graves. I've particularly seen that waterfall, and I've seen many other, not waterfall, water feature, and I've seen many others over the years in similar places, and they do give a nice position. I don't think that we can let the vandals win. I do think that we have to look after the spirit of our town and see if we can do something to make it an impressive place. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And of course, we have some plans, as was mentioned earlier, that we're consulting on for the public realm of our town centre. And let's be honest, with COVID and the pressure that town centres are under, our businesses need it. But with that, we'll come to Councillor Laura Lorman.
Thank you, Chairman. I fully endorse what Councillor Graves just said. It has been extremely pessimistic and negative. I feel the residents in Wellingborough deserve something really nice and positive, and areas that can be enhanced is that particular area, and a water feature would just complete it. If we could get a cafe there or a restaurant that will allow in the future people to have a meal outside, what nicer. And yes, Councillor Graves was absolutely right. I was born on the continent. It is part and parcel. You have water features, you have lakes and whatever. People don't drown in lakes continuously. People don't throw rubbish into areas. And I think the residents in Wellingborough really, truly deserve something nice. And a water feature is something nice. To really smarten up that particular area. I remember many years ago an administration spending something like £250,000 on mosaics, and after 20 odd years, I think those mosaics, the money was water down the drain.
Thank you, Councillor Lorman. Councillor Allybone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Councillor Lorman and what's been said. I'm in favour of the proposed water feature. I think the initial drawings we've seen look quite promising, and I think it's in the right area too. I think my only reservation, and I am in favour of this, but my only reservation are I think quite high maintenance costs. Now, obviously at this stage they're not accurate costs, and they may well be less than that. I appreciate that. Unfortunately, we live in a litigious society, and health and safety, I suspect, will take up a fair chunk of that maintenance money. I'm not quite sure what the bulk of the rest of it would be. I must admit, I feel slightly guilty on the last point that Councillor Lorman made about the mosaics, because it was my wife when she was mayoress the first time round and on a visit to Vitlick that thought it might be a good idea to have them at Wellingborough, and I think there are obviously other people as well. So perhaps we can lay some of that at her door. But I'm in favour of the water feature. I just query the costs. We don't need them or want them to get out of hand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We certainly don't. We will take 4.4 separately, but in the meantime, Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Chair. I am in favour of this water feature in principle anyway. I like nice areas, and I too have been around Europe and have enjoyed various water features. However, let's not fool ourselves that we are talking about a water feature in Wellingborough where lots of people will enjoy it, but at what cost? If the maintenance costs are so high that actually it actually doesn't make sense or financial sense to have this water feature, we need to think twice. Furthermore, if we're going to pay a lot of money to repair something that may and possibly will be damaged, it's going to be a very expensive water feature. I'm not being unrealistic, I'm not being negative. I would like to see something in our town centre that would brighten that area, but not at any cost. We should not be looking at this with rose-tinted glasses. We live in an area where there is a lot of vandalism and damage, and this may well be damaged in the future. As if we are prepared to keep paying and continue to pay for repairs for something that where money could be spent on other things that could actually help other areas of the town, then go ahead. But I think it's very short-sighted to think that this water feature won't be damaged, and it's going to cost us a lot of money in the long run.
Can I come back, Chairman?
First of all, we'll take Councillor Henley, and then you can come in after Councillor Bell, Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I genuinely wasn't planning to speak on this. I realise that's my default line, but I wasn't planning to. But there's a few things that I've said tonight that I feel struck a chord. A few years ago now, over 20 years ago now, I remember voting in favour of putting in a repair to the tree to get in the birds. They weren't at all popular. We certainly didn't spend anywhere near £170,000 on it, but they did provide a lovely feature.
For the market, and then we turned it into a lovely feature. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Chair. Was I interrupting you there? Sorry, apologies.
Carry on, Councillor Henley.
Thank you, Chair. As I was saying, yeah. So we ended up spending money on the tree being resculpted, and it did provide a amenity, and people hated it when it came in, but over the 15 to 20 years they generally did like it until it was vandalised. It got pulled down, and unfortunately that was it. Now, Councillor Morell said we shouldn't let the vandals win, but I seem to remember not that long ago now that we agreed to close the south part of the High Street car park because the vandals were winning. Totally, and the issue is exactly the same item. We decided then that we should close that car park simply because there was risk of antisocial behaviour in that car park. The police weren't comfortable, but the police said that if we were actively and proactively doing things about that car park, they would accept it. But this committee, in its wisdom, chose to close the car park against my wishes. The reality is that this area will be used during the day, but quite a lot of time during the evening it won't be, because we haven't managed to build a cafe culture of the evenings, and at the moment with the curfews we won't be having a cafe culture in the evenings. So therefore the risk of vandalism is incredibly high. I'm not convinced by the cost. I'm certainly not convinced by the running cost afterwards, and I'll be voting against.
Thank you. Members, I was just, apologies for that, I was just checking on something. I do recall that when a certain barrier was put up for the market traders and it was turned into an attractive feature, Everybody said it would be vandalised. To the very best of my knowledge, I don't think it ever has been. We always think and we always concern ourselves with the possibility of vandalism, but it doesn't always materialise. And part of the plans for this whole area is to open it up, to lighten it up, to make it more attractive. And that, I would say, reduces the likelihood of vandalism. But with that, that's my view. We'll come on to Councillor Paul Bell.
Thank you, Chairman. It's very interesting how we all have our own views on this. If members remember that on Monday, the Development Committee said we would ask the people of Wellingborough what they want. It's a design and idea, and some ideas went out. We should be prejudging what the people of this borough want. And I think we should wait till we hear the response from them. We hear about the costs of the capital cost. We hear about the maintenance costs. Well, if anybody's being involved in H&R and heating, one will understand that the water has to be treated with chemicals to stop Legionnaires. And that's very expensive, and that requires a lot of testing. But that's a side issue. Also, it's something this borough council will leave, maybe something the town council will take on. But underlining principle of this is it's gone out to consultation for the next 6 weeks. It's up to the people of this borough to tell us what they want. Now, they may say they want it. If they want it, they will be paying for it. It's like the principle of free car parking at the point of use. They vote for it every year and they want it. So let's leave it to the people and then we make the decision in 6 weeks. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Graves and then Councillor Scarborough.
Thank you, Chairman. Anyone think I'm in support of this? Not for me to big up Kettering, even though I live on the doorstep, but they installed a water feature in their market square and it looks great. I don't know where it's been vandalised. It seems to work the odd times I go there. What can you vandalise? Looking at the design that I've seen, it'd be extremely difficult. And you can turn water off at a certain hour and on again. You can have lighting, you can have CCTV. The original scheme that I look forward to, I'll say again, to Bridget Gamble, was to have an ice cream, soft drinks and coffee facility in that area. And I know for a fact, perhaps I shouldn't know, but La Rocca would be very keen to facilitate that, although it would be difficult within their existing building. I believe the refurbishment of the Tide Barn was intended to incorporate something like that. That would enhance the whole thing. What is wrong with making a grassy, tatty piece of square in front of an iconic building into something that is truly memorable and would be pleasing to the eye and for the function of the people of Wellingborough?
Thank you for that.
Chairman, is it possible to, before Councillor Scarborough, I understand he wants to tie the debate up, if I could have a word?
Yes, you can have a word. I thought it was the privilege of the chairman to tie up the debate, but sure. Over to you, Councillor Partridge Underwood, and then Councillor Scarborough.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say about the town centre working group. You know, we went into the meetings, we thought long and hard about, you know, just what should be in, what shouldn't be in, where it should be, and all sorts of things like that. A lot of thought went into it. What this is giving people options. We went into that meeting expecting, well, knowing that councillors had said, quoting Vittlish, quoting other parts of the country and other, you know, towns, and how successful water, even as close as Rushden Lakes, you know. So a lot of thought, and so we bring this together. And then we present it, as Councillor Bell so rightly said, we present it to the public. Let's listen to them, and then they will have the final say. One thing I will say, and that is where there is water, then the public will gather. That's an absolute fact. You only have to look down at the embankment on a good summer's day, you know, and the children are enjoying their water feature, the boaters are enjoying the river, and you know, so that's a fact. They will give us. So I would say I will be supporting that. No two ways about it. And let's give Wellingborough a chance to lift its image a little bit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Partridge. And with Councillor Scarborough, you're indulged.
Thank you, Chairman, for so indulging me. I don't think it was my intention to liven the meeting up quite as much as I managed to do. However, I think it's been a really good debate. And the things I would pick out of this, apart obviously from the litany of things that we've tried to brighten up the town over the last, well, 30 years to my knowledge, and rather longer, I think, to Councillor Morell's knowledge on the council. A lot of stuff has gone wrong. And I do think it's right that we're asking the public what they think about this, and that we should indeed listen to what they say to us. I think using the opportunity of that consultation to look hard at the design, to make sure we're making it as vandal-proof as we possibly can. The designs I've seen, I think, are 5 wells. It wasn't very clear from the stuff on the development papers, which strike me as exactly the place that people are going to chuck their used beer cans. So I think we need to look quite hard at the design, and I also think using the time of the consultation to look very hard at the running costs. 600 a month was in the development papers. That sounds like a lot of money to me for a feature of this sort. I'd hope we can design it in such a way that it's not only vandal-proof but low maintenance. And by the way, I'm not against brightening up the town. I'm just rather bruised by what happened to our various previous attempts to do it. Over the whole of my time on the council, but this is in essence quite a good idea lurking underneath. But I think it needs some more work, and I think we need to use the time of the consultation. Anyway, that's all I want to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Well, that has been a very healthy debate, and I would remind members that 4.4 says agree in principle the request for capital funding of £170,000 as shown in section 7. What we'll do then, members, is we will hopefully agree items 4.1, 4.2 and 4.3. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Anyone against, please indicate. Those are resolved. No abstentions, I take it. And now we will take the next 2 recommendations as detailed. 4.4, agree in principle the request of capital funding of £170,000 as shown in section 7. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 All those against, please say aye and indicate in the chat function.
Aye.
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 I make that 3. Anybody correct me if I'm wrong? Carol? And they are noted. Thank you for that, members.
Right, Councillor Griffiths.
Okay, that is therefore recommended on vote. Thank you. And now we'll move to 4.5. Agree the request for capital budget of £69,000 as shown in section 8 into the current 2020-2021 capital programme. All those in favour, please unmute and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone against, please say aye and note in the chat. That is therefore recommended. Thank you very much for that debate, and thank you, Mr. Darcy, for that report. We will now move on to agenda item 7, which is the property report. And that will be presented by Mr. Piper.
Thank you, Chairman. The report is in front of you and I've nothing to add to the main body of the report, but I would like to give a brief verbal update, if I may, regarding the Jackson's Lane High Street site, which is mentioned in Appendix 1, but has moved on a little since that text. So the situation is that officers and the council's consultant Deloitte are now in regular contact with the developer. The developer submitted an outline scheme for pre-application planning advice and have now received a detailed response. They're considering this feedback and how this can be taken into account in the design and specification of the scheme, and they're discussing that with planning officers. Keepmoat and Deloitte are discussing viability and residual land value, which has yet to be agreed. Now, provided those discussions continue in the right direction, officers are intending to bring a report to full council on the 20th of October. That's to say, a report will be brought, and all being well, we'll be seeking approval to enter into a conditional contract to dispose of the site to Keepmoat. And the conditionality of that contract would, of course, protect both the council's and the developer's respective interests. After the council report's published, it's intended to offer a drop-in question and answer centre session for elected members in advance of the 20th of October. That would be a virtual session for members to either submit direct questions or to submit them before. Other than that, Chair, I've got nothing to add to the report, and I would like to offer to answer questions, of course.
Thank you, Adrian. Councillor Tim Halliburn, you're first to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, mine's a fairly simple question, and I suspect a lot less controversial than the Jackson's Lane part of this. But on page 72, 6.4, well, we're talking about the former youth club. Obviously, we're taking back legal possession because the tenant has proved difficult to locate. Does that mean we haven't been receiving any rent from it for a while, or has the rent been paid, or has it ceased when the guy did, or what? And I'm just wondering, rather than selling it, if we could take it back, what other use could we put it to get some sort of rental income? Thank you.
Yes, Chairman, I can answer that. I believe it was originally let on a long lease at a nominal or no rent, so the rent was very small. It was a very long lease, but basically what the tenant did was abandon it. The difficulty is we need to legally take possession back, and what we have to do first is to make sure that we've done everything we can, or that our legal advisors have done everything they can to identify the tenant. The reason for tonight's report is to just basically to effectively declare it a surplus. In other words, that once we do get it back, we can make a decision as to what to do with it in future, and that could be a variety of things, because there are there's more than one party expressed interest to the council in the property should it return to the council.
Thanks for that, Mr. Piper.
And it is a well-liked facility for the people of Findon. I know there is a lot of interest, and I also know Councillor Weatherall is well aware of that and doing some work on that. Councillor Scarborough, question for Mr. Piper.
Sorry, I've unmuted now. Thank you. Righto. First, I've got two questions, if I may, Chairman. First of all, at Appendix 1, it's Project PP 015 multi-storey car park. As Mr. Darcy and I hope Mr. Piper will know, some time ago I was sent a number of photographs by by a resident of Wellingborough showing extremely poor finishes to levels 3 and 4 in a number of ways. The council at that stage acknowledged that this was not finished. These areas were not finished to the standard we would expect. But I've heard nothing since about rectification, and I'm told by the resident that nothing has been done. I don't like to think that we are taking back from the contractor shoddy work without putting it right. So I would appreciate an update on that, if I may, from the officers. The other area, I was in discussion with Mr. Darcy in the days before the meeting, and he said that Mr. Piper's report would also cover the cycling and walking schemes that have been being developed in the borough, mainly with county council money. But in the case of the St Barnabas School Streets project, this involved the commitment to some expenditure by the borough, particularly in respect of a path into the area from Bassett's Close. And it would be very useful to have an update on that, because I'm going to want to speak on that later on in the item in debate. So it's really those two things I have questions about at the moment.
Thank you. And Mr. Piper?
Yes, so dealing with the first item, the issue about the ongoing work and dealing with any defects will be managed by the council's project management contractor. I will get Councillor Scarborough some more detail in terms of an update after the meeting, but it was drawn to the contractor's attention, and it was discussed, and a tour was done looking at the items that were had been drawn to officers' attention. So it has been dealt with, but I need to ask the project manager to provide more detail.
Yeah. In particular, I'd like to know whether they've actually. It's clearly contractors' liability, and I'd like to know whether they've done the work.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that can be.
Can all members of the Resources Committee have that update, and we'll give it a couple of weeks. There's no immediate urgency for that. So if we could have a report, Adrian, by a briefing note in approximately 14 days, that would be absolutely fine.
Okay, that's quite possible. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
As far as the cycling and walking schemes are concerned, there is work going on with the County Council, who of course are leading on those matters. I can tell you that the council will be carrying out an inspection of its own cycle paths, taking into account comments that members of the public have recently made about the condition and certain changes and alterations that could possibly be made to improve the environment for cyclists. As far as the cycling and walking schemes are concerned, that's led by the county, but again, we can provide some details of the work that we've been doing with the County Council and the feedback we've been giving to the County Council on how those are developing. But that's the principal reason why it's not in this report, because it's a County Council matter, and we're working with them on it. So I need to obtain that information to report back on it.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lorman.
Thank you, Chairman. A question to you and Mr. Piper. Mr. Piper mentioned earlier on PP007 Appendix 1, High Street, and that a report is going to come back to Resources, I presume, or to Full Council in October of this year. Is that report then to decide by Full Council whether we sell the land, or is that just an agreement in principle that we agree to a particular developer? If you could clarify that for me, please.
Yes, I will clarify that. I think back in 2012, the council agreed to choose a developer. This would be whether or not to, in principle, to sell the land. But as I've said, the contract, we would be asking members to support and agree to entering into would be a conditional contract, and the conditionality would protect the council and, of course, to some extent, the developer. So yes, it would be an in principle decision to sell subject to contract.
And the decision to sell will be taken by full council, as has been previously stated, but we will have a drop-in session and a chance for people to look at it in detail. Any other questions?
Chairman?
Councillor Barry Graves.
Thank you. Yeah, this is not immediately something that the council couldn't help on, I guess, other than lobbying. I'm picking up on Councillor Scarborough's cycleways and referring specifically to the new estate behind Sainsbury's. For many years, we've lobbied for a crossing from Queensway, Northampton Road into Wilby. It's never happened. We got very close when Sainsbury's were going to build a bridge, when they extended their store, and that's gone kaput. We were going to have a crossing, but it didn't meet the criteria of people being killed, which is a pretty grotesque way of looking at it. But the fact remains that new people, residents on that estate, will want, no doubt, to cycle and walk into the countryside. Now, at the moment, I guess they come out onto Park Farm Way, turn right, and go up into what do you call it, Harrowden Road. It would be very nice to think we could find a route for them to go into Wilby that takes them into Doddington and a lot of nice countryside behind. And I'm just wondering if we can look at that. And it's going to be very difficult. I heard, and I don't know if it's true, there's going to be an underpass from that estate across Park Farm Way. But if we could lobby for some sort of access going, where are we going, west instead of east, it would be very well received.
Thank you. I'm sure Mr. Piper's made note of that and is aware of it already. Thank you.
I am, Chair, and certainly the proposed routes into the countryside are part of the discussion.
Thank you.
And of course, we are limited in time, aren't we? And obviously, we are also limited by Northamptonshire County Council. And I am aware of some of the work that's been done by residents, some excellent ideas and some that are really challenging ideas that have been put forward, such as pedestrianisation of parts of our town centre. But of course, that is a big piece of work. And if that is to be done, it needs to be done as part of the Unitary Northamptonshire Council. We have not got the time, we haven't got the resources. And at this moment in time, it is not the Borough Council's direct responsibility other than to lobby and get as much of the funds available for cycling and walking that we possibly can get hold of. Any other members got any questions on the property report? I can, Councillor Skittrell. Councillor Skittrell unfortunately has missed some of the discussion due to IT issues, and for that reason will obviously be abstaining. But with that, members, the committee is invited to resolve to 4.1, note the progress with regard to the projects outlined in Appendix 1. 4.2, approve in principle the disposal of the...
Sorry, both Councillor Scarborough and I we're waiting to speak on the actual debate itself rather than the questions for...
Off you go, Councillor Henley, and then
Councillor was first, so I...
Off you go.
Andrew.
Councillor Scarborough. Unmute.
You're muted, Andrew.
Pardon. Having received the report from Mr. Piper, there are a number of things I think on which I would wish to speak. First of all, let's talk about cycling and walking schemes for a minute. This council managed to invest in the St Barnabas scheme in a small way, and that was great. The two county council led schemes in the town centre are frankly pathetic. Their only main purpose, as far as I can see, is to inhibit the business of the shops in Cambridge Street. They do nothing for cyclists, and they do very, very little for walkers. Perhaps give us a little bit more social distance. Frankly, the performance in this area is utterly feeble thus far. And to my mind, we really need to be pressing the county council to extract their digit and do something. They've got government money and nothing's happening. I would also 100% agree with Barry Graves that our top priority and our influence in the time we have left needs to be exerted on this, needs to be the crossing of Park Farm Way between Wellingborough Town and Wilby Village. It's been, Barry's quite right. People have been calling for this for many, many years, and it really needs sorting out, because as I've been finding as I've walked around the borough during lockdown, the thing that really makes pedestrian travel difficult is severance of routes by fast roads. It also makes cycling much more difficult and much more dangerous. Sorting out that transit from Wilby into town really should be not just our priority, if we're looking, as the government wants us to, at cycling and walking, but the county council's priority as well. And plenty of good ideas have been brought forward. I'll also add that I've taken the opportunity to explore the Stanwell Way Shelley Road development, and there is indeed a footpath that goes through that development. At the moment it goes round, but it will go through in the future. It then takes you across the 509 and brings you out on the Mears Ashby Road, just north of Wilby. And it would be a lovely walk, except for the fact you take your life in your hands trying to get to the 509, because by then the traffic, which is slowed near the roundabout, has got up to full speed and is coming at you in both directions at 80. So these severance issues are a real problem. I'm delighted that we're going to look at modernising the cycle paths. They were put in now 20 years ago, and the suggestions from the members of the public to improve them strike me as being very sensible. But as usual, the good work tends to stop when Wellingborough Council's land stops. So we put in the cycleways have been well used, we can improve the cycleways. The difficulty is when you get out into the area for which the responsibility principally is with NCC. It does seem to me on this that we really need to be pressing them hard and potentially offering to supplement the money they put in. We can do a lot. We've got the money. We should be doing much, much more on this. I'm going to move on though and talk, if I may, about the High Street. I'm going to talk about the High Street. I'm sorry, but this is shortchanging us. After all this time, I don't see why we need to get a rushed report that we're hoping we can get through in time for council in October. This needs proper committee scrutiny and a proper recommendation to council. And for that reason, in my view, we should stop straining to get it to council in 2 or 3 weeks' time and think about doing this on a sensible timescale, which would take us to the December council. There's still plenty of time at that stage in the life of the council. Why do we need to rush and push the council into a take it or leave it decision when what we need is proper scrutiny of this most important, and I would add most controversial, project? I think members of the public who are listening to us would think this is being sprung on us in an attempt to minimise public interest and involvement. And we all know how huge that public interest and involvement is. So let's do this in a sensible way rather than rushing. Bring it back to the next resources. Let us debate it properly. Let us come up with a recommendation and then take it to council. What's the point of rushing, except to give the impression we don't care what the public thinks?
Thank you for that. I don't believe that rushing can be a word that's used, bearing in mind the length of time it has taken since the public meeting that was held all that time ago. Councillor Henley and then Councillor Skittle.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, I have chased you regularly on the High Street site over the past year, and I was surprised, like Councillor Scarborough, in the way we've managed to get to this situation. I was fully expecting a full detailed report to come to resources so that we could then have a full proper debate, and any other councillors who were interested could then attend, or if they've got the interest, watch it afterwards. Because let's be clear, a main council is not the time to start going into nitty-gritty detail. It's never has been, and it doesn't end well. So I was very disappointed to get that update, and the update we had from Mr. Darcy was saying that only currently the planning department and Mr. Piper has seen the detail. That means that if that's true, that means that you haven't even seen the detail. And I'm stunned as to why you'd want to be bouncing yourself into a position whereby we're rushing towards a meeting.
You're muted.
It's told me someone muted me, so I don't know why that happened, but okay. I get that this has been going for a long time, but we owe it to the people to do this properly. Let's be clear, we didn't select Keep Moat from a position of strength all those years ago. They were the last remaining candidates who didn't pull out of the process. That should have given us a clue at the time, but we've still been going through this ever since. So I would much rather we wait and do this properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henley. I had a strange vision of you chasing me across Jackson's Lane High Street. I don't know whether you'd have caught me or not, but that view will remain with me for a long while. Councillor Skittle.
I had a strange picture up here myself, but moving on to the matter, the Wilby Way crossing is something that I've had brought up to me quite frequently, and actually last Saturday was the last time it was mentioned. So I do think it's an important crossing, and we should do whatever we can to move that forward.
I totally agree, and Councillor Scarborough made a very strong case for having a unitary council where these schemes can be actually worked on, where common sense schemes can be worked on, and where nonsensical schemes like the ones mentioned would not take place. And I do know that the county councillor for that area, with regard that Councillor Scarborough mentioned, has raised it on a number of occasions with Northamptonshire County Council on behalf of the businesses in our town. So with that, we'll move to Councillor O'Loorman.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a very quick point of clarification for you. If this project of High Street is being decided, is that not a point for the future unitary to decide, rather than us? There must be a cut-off point by which we are not permitted to take decisions anymore.
Thank you for that. I personally agree with the comments made earlier that this is of such importance to the Borough Council of Wellingborough and the people of Wellingborough that I believe it should be a decision made ahead of unitary. And maybe that is why our officers are keen to get that report to full council at the earliest opportunity. Members, your comments have been heard. They have been listened to. This discussion about Jackson's Lane High Street does not form part of the proposed action as detailed in 4.1 to 4.3. but we will take on board those comments that have been made, and you have been listened to.
Chair, I'd like to move 4.4 then as a formal motion that the High Street site should return to the next resources meeting for a full and frank debate ahead of that next council meeting. I'm sure I can find a seconder in a second.
Chair, I'd second that.
Chairman, can I just ask for clarification on that? Are we saying that a resources meeting before that council meeting?
I'm happy to clarify for you, Tom. I want the next resources meeting to have on its item on its agenda whereby we thoroughly discuss it, and then we make a recommendation to the full council following that meeting. So I'm not asking for an interim meeting. I'm asking that we do at the next meeting of the resources, we discuss this fully and properly with a full documented pack.
The 18th of November is the next resources meeting.
When is the next council meeting?
After the 18th of November. Carol will type it in shortly.
8th of December, Chairman.
Yes.
Members, it's over to you.
I think, Chairman, you know, there's nothing, certainly nothing to hide. To a certain degree, yeah, you know, there's nothing wrong with going through the committee structure. You know, that we pride ourselves in utilising the committee structure. I know at the public meeting, you leader, promised the public that the full council would decide. Are we getting a little bit sidetracked in thinking that it would be presented straight to a full council, bypassing the committee structure? I'm just asking that as a question, leader.
Yeah, thank you. I think the intention of the officers was to have a briefing, a session like we have done successfully in the past ahead of a full council meeting. If the will of this committee is that we have a resources committee, provided the decision on such an important matter, as we did with the Castle Theatre, is made by the full council, I will be happy with that myself. Yeah. But it is up to this committee to decide if they wish to go with that timescale. There is no hidden agenda. There is no rush. And Councillor Henley is exactly right. I have not yet seen the plans. I want to see the plans. I have never, ever had a meeting with Keepmoat, and I will not until we've got to the stage that we're referring to here. So I think if this committee decides that that approach is the right one, then that's what we'll go for.
Chairman, can I?
Sorry, no, carry on.
Well, Chairman, Leader, you've always said that it's up to the full council to decide the outcome of the site and whether we sell together. I just feel that I hear what Adam said. There's time, but we're running out of time. The clock's ticking like mad. And if we don't come to a decision, we all know it's going to go over to Northamptonshire to make the decision for us. And I think that would be a disaster. Why should we miss out on the October council meeting? Why can't we take it forward then?
Okay.
Defer it to November.
Councillor Scarborough.
I'm not muted now, thank you. Yeah. To my mind, where we are now is we are less than, I think it's 3 weeks away from full council.
Yeah.
No member has seen anything about this other than the stuff obviously we've all seen over many years in the past. So we don't know what's coming forward. We heard from Mr. Piper that the officers aren't yet ready to write a paper giving a clear recommendation to the council. They are hoping that discussions will continue in an appropriate way to enable them to do so. For me, those are real warning flags about the fact that there's a danger the council will be taking this without due consideration. And just in terms of decent decision-making processes, as Tom says, we are a committee council. We do take things through committee. We thrash it out well, which means we can have a sensible debate and conclusion at full council, which is not the place to drill down to the details of major projects of this sort. The other aspect of this is, I'm afraid, the optics of it. The leader rightly says we have nothing to hide, and he and others have taken a lot of flack over this from the public over the years. I was embarrassed at the stuff that was hurt by the stuff that was thrown at Councillor Morell in planning, when planning was simply doing its job. So we do need to consider that there is huge public interest and concern about this. And to my mind, the worst thing we can do, even if we're not intending to, is to give the impression that this is a done deal. And now for those purposes, I think the extra short number of weeks to go through the democratic process properly with full public participation is by far the best way of actually doing what I think we should do. And I agree with the leader on this. This is our business to resolve. This is Wellingborough Council's business to resolve. It will be a failure if we don't get it done before one way or the other, before the unitary comes in. It may be the Keep Moat deal is great, in which case it should go through. It may be it's not, in which case it shouldn't. None of us know that because we don't know what it is at this stage. And I think we need to do that in the full glare of public scrutiny. And the best way of achieving that is by taking a more measured run at it through the committee structure. The other thing I would add is, of course, if the officers are ready with a report to resources before the November-December committee cycle, there's no reason why we can't call a one agenda item special resources, followed by a one agenda item special council to sort this out. We've done that before, and we can do it again if we need to. Those are often the nights of highest theatre in the life of Wellingborough Borough Council. I remember the debate on leasing the car park to Morrison's. The council was buzzing that night with full public participation and a close vote among the members. And I felt a good democratic decision was made, albeit on the casting vote of the mayor. So my view of this is very much that Councillor Henley's amendment, he says the next resources committee, that doesn't necessarily mean the one in November. It could be a special resources committee somewhat earlier.
On that basis, provided the 4.4 includes wording to the mention that the final decision on the disposal will be made by full council, I'm happy to go along with that, members.
Happy to amend, Chair.
Okay.
Yep, so am I.
Okay, so members, any other? Councillor Paul Bell, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. This reminds me of the Castle Glams Hall.
Yeah.
If you're going to agree, and I think the way forward is a special resources meeting and a special council meeting. You cannot do it as part of a standard resources meeting. If you look at tonight on the items we've had, it's 9 o'clock now, and we're not for it. I think if I've no problem going ahead, I think it should be a special resources and a special council. Councillor Scarborough's wrong in some ways. It's the right of every member to drill down if it's a full council meeting. They won't have the privilege of sitting on resources, and it's a very controversial subject whichever way you go to it. Yeah, most people think it's a done deal. You get letters, and many councillors do. Oh, you already sold the land. Well, you haven't. I think you have to agree that it can be a special resources and a special council meeting. I don't think you can put it any other way.
Yep. I think I do agree with Councillor Bell that a separate meeting would be the way forward, and then we can give it. I think the wording was used, full scrutiny of this committee, of the what used to be the Policy and Resources Committee. It's now the Resources Committee, and I think that is the way forward with the decision being made by full council. Carol, have you got some wording that you can actually put out for 4.4 from having listened to this?
Yes, yeah, I can put something together for that. Not a problem.
I think we know what we're saying.
Yeah.
So, members, we have the proposed action as detailed at 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3. All those in favour of those, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And we have a further item at 4.4, wording to be finalised on a separate resources committee meeting, with the full decision to be taken by full council. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone against, please indicate in the chat facility. Anyone wishing to abstain? I can't see any, so that is duly resolved. Thank you very much for that healthy debate. We move on to agenda item 8. The recoverable council tax, housing benefit, overpayments and sundry debts. Hopefully Mr. Watson's still with us. Sean will take this, Mr. Darcy will take it, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take this with the pink paper as well. I've got nothing to add to the report. I just wanted to highlight that the NBN that went round with the detail of the potential contentious one, there was a date error in the pink papers that were there in 2016. That should say 2018. Other than that, happy to take any questions if there are any, but if it does relate to the pink papers, we may need to go below the line.
Okay. Members, have you any questions in relation to the report, excluding the pink paper element?
No.
Councillor Allibone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm on the last of the white papers here on page 84. There does seem to be quite a high figure there from Pure Enterprise. Now, he operates a chain of restaurants that collectively are known as Frank's. You've got 2 in Northampton, there's one at Billing, there's one at Poster, I believe, and at one time he did have a franchise at Castle Theatre. And I'm just wondering what this relates to, because the reason, it just says other. It does seem a high figure, and I'm just wondering what that relates to as far as we're concerned, because I think when the castle was transferred, or the contract was transferred, Frank ceased to be in any case. I just wanted a bit of clarification on it.
Councillor Allibone, it was in the briefing note, but we'll get Mr. Darcy to respond.
Yeah, so the briefing note did mention that this was to do with the Castle Theatre. It was raised, unfortunately, too late after liquidation. So we've got to write it off, and it should have been raised earlier, but there was unfortunately a staffing change and it was to do with rental of the cafe at the time.
Okay, thanks for that. To be honest, I hadn't seen the briefing note, so my apologies for jumping in when there was an explanation available. I haven't had the.
No problem. Our emails are chock-a-block, Councillor Allibone, and we can't catch everything. Councillor Scarborough.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just going to say the complete reverse, which was that the NBN I thought sending out the NBN on this, I thought was extremely helpful. It's enabled all of us, I suspect, to get over our initial anger at what we read and come to this meeting, I hope, in a position to say, well, it shouldn't have happened. It did happen. It's done. And let's put it behind us. Simple as that. Sadder but wiser, I suspect. We weren't the only people to be taken in by this gentleman.
Chairman, of course, he's now running the Griffin's Head at Mears Ashby.
Thank you. Members, it was ever so interesting. I was in the vaults, was it earlier today, Tom, or was it yesterday? I can't remember. Time flies.
Yesterday, leader.
Oh, it was, yeah. Just shows you, doesn't it? And I just picked hold of one of the old ledgers, and it was the report of the Resources Committee in 2005, quite a while ago, just a bit before my time. And at the time, we wrote off £43,779 then. And, you know, on the general collection rates, we have to remember just how well our team do in collecting a debt. They are even more challenging times for that team with regard to COVID and the pressures that they're under. But with that, I would propose that we agree the recommendation as detailed, unless anybody else has anything else to say. The proposed action that this committee is invited to resolve to write off £133,630.28 irrecoverable council tax and housing benefit over payment balances. And 4.2, the committee is also invited to resolve to note the amount of £82,715.32 has been written off under the delegated powers of the Section 151 officer.
Aye.
All those in favour, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Please note in the chat box. Any abstentions? There are none. So thank you, members, for that. And we didn't have to stray into pink paper territory. I have no other urgent items to discuss tonight. Thank you for your attendance. Apologies for the few hiccups that we had with technical issues earlier on, but we got there in the end. And thank you for your time this evening. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Good night, Mr. Chairman.
Bye.
Right, everyone.
Thank you.